Everyone has a good story to tell, and you know it is a good story when the person leans in and says, "See, what had happened was," and then tells the story.
This podcast provides those opportunities to tell those types of stories in education. The stories will be from the good, the bad, and everything in between. We wanted to do this podcast to showcase stories in education and to give flowers to educators who deserve recognition for their excellence.
Our guests will feature parents, students, teachers, administrators, and just about anyone who is involved in education. These stories will inspire you, challenge you, and help you to reflect on your practice of education, whether it be from the inside of the classroom or outside.
If you have a good story to tell, we'd love to hear it. Email us at contact@andredowty.org. We'd love to have you or your story on a future episode. See What Had Happened starts now.
Welcome to See What Had Happened, where we hear stories from education, from the good, the bad, and everything in between. We are your co-hosts, Danielle and Andre Daughty. And if this is your first episode tuning in, we want to say welcome.
Yeah.
And if you are a returning viewer, we want to say welcome back.
Absolutely. Welcome back, homies.
All right. Today we have a very special guest joining our podcast. Please welcome the incomparable.
Yes.
Super educator.
Yes.
Mrs. Ycedra Daughty.
And for those who don't know, yes, this is my mama. We are so glad to have my mama on this episode. And she has years and years of experience. So for those who don't know you, mama, go ahead and share out real quick. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've always wanted to be a teacher from my earliest remembrance of playing school. So I did become a teacher, and I taught in Texas for 2 years. Then I taught first grade for 11 years. Then I taught fifth grade and sixth grade. I did some high school, weekend, Saturday school principaling. And then I became an elementary school principal. And I have been in education for 45 years before I retired.
So you have been in education longer than I have been alive.
Yes.
That's when you know that, like, you know what you're talking about in education. Like you got to know the standards inside out, upside down. Like
the old and the new.
Yeah. You're like, nah, them kids not learning because I remember. Yeah. Okay. Well, how we do this here is we're just going to first set up the story. Think about the story you're about to share with us. Is it from a teacher's perspective? You as a student? Is it from you as a principal's perspective? Like, set up the story for us before we jump into the story.
Well, today I just want to talk about culture and the culture of the school.
All right. And since the title of our show is See What Had Happened, because we know a good story always starts with somebody like, see what had happened was. We'll let you say that phrase and then start off and talk to us about culture.
See, what had happened was, being a school teacher and a principal, I always thought it was so important that you develop a culture within the classroom or within the school. So see, what had happened is that I felt as if I was successful creating a very nurturing culture within my classroom, those 16 years I taught, and the 20 plus something years I've been an assistant principal and principal. So what I want to do is share some ways people can develop a culture in their classroom or in their school. And I'm going to first start with the classroom. As a classroom teacher, the teacher should decide what kind of culture do you want to have in your own classroom. And it should be a culture of love and care, mercy, patience, respect for one another, regardless of whether the child is behaving or misbehaving. So some ways a teacher can cultivate a culture in their own classroom is from the first day, getting to know the children in the classroom. And I'm not only speaking of self-contained, but even those buildings that have departmentalized, and every hour or even in high school, you have a different bunch of children. The first thing you need to do is to know who your children are. Find out about them. Have them fill out a questionnaire. There are so many different things they can do. Like you could have a whole list of questions and the kids have to stand for yes. It's called vote on your feet. So you could ask your children, how many of you have a brother at home? And they would stand. How many of you have a pet at home? And the teachers making little notes while they're doing this beginning of the school year game, but they're really learning the kids. So that later on, if the kid comes in the door and they're sad, they may want to tell you, well, you know, my dog had to have some shots and now he can't walk as good. But you've already made a connection with that child. You've developed your culture of love and respect, mercy, and patience. So that's one of the things you should do the first day of school is get to know your children. And it will keep developing. That's just the first day. You'll learn more and more about your kids and they'll learn more and more about you. And just like you did for me to start this, the teacher should also do that the first day. Tell the kids where they came from. Tell the kids if your parents were on welfare or food stamps. They need to know that. They need to see what they can become. That even if their family's living in Section 8 right now, they can grow up, get a good education, and not have to be in Section 8. So tell them about yourself. Show them pictures of your family. Some teachers put up their certificates and their diplomas from the high schools and colleges so the kids can see them. I know one teacher that had a picture of when she went to college and she played softball. That person was Michelle Hightower. So every one of her kids got to see that she went to college on a softball scholarship. So share with your children, find out about them. Then from there, you and your children need to decide on expectations or procedures for your room. And I use the words expectations and procedures instead of rules. When people hear rules, they think of the 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not. Don't do this. Don't talk. Don't get up out your chair. As opposed to a procedure, in our classroom, we will raise our hands when we need to go get a pencil. Or however the class decides all those things in the classroom. That makes your classroom have a culture and everyone knows what's expected every day.
I'm curious, from the principal's point of view, are the expectations and the procedures the same? Like how would you build that culture on the first day that you meet your staff?
Okay, that's a good question. I was going to do that down when I got to school-wide, but it's a good question. If you have a school that has departmental classrooms, like there are 6 fourth grade teachers or whatever, and the children are traveling from classroom to classroom, those teachers, even as they make procedures and expectations with their children, they should meet together as a group so that when the children go from room to room, there are basically the same expectations in every classroom. Same thing for school. At the beginning of the school year, when the teachers and the principal is meeting, and when you start getting your committees like your PBIS or your discipline committee, those people should come together and make school-wide procedures, school-wide expectations. So for places that are common, like the cafeteria, the playground, the halls, the restrooms, every class is following the same procedures. So you get the input from the teachers the first week of school, y'all build them together, then you discuss these with your classroom and say, we have some procedures in the classroom, and then we have some that are school-wide for all the common areas. Did that answer the question?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so the next way to build culture in the classroom is to have jobs, And I know that in elementary schools, they do this. So in secondary school, there has to be some kind of way to get the children involved, and it's a rotating thing. Kids, even the children who want to misbehave, when they have a job, they become part of the classroom, and the pride of this is our classroom overtakes them. So even if it's the person who passes out paper every day or pencils or runs the lunch count to the cafeteria, since all of my experience except 1 year of being a Saturday school principal, in which my young son had to attend because he made a bad grade in Algebra 1, so I made him get up every Saturday morning for a year while I was Saturday school principal at the old John Marshall High School. So I don't have a lot of experience with high school, but there has to be a way secondary teachers can do that also. I would say that in the classroom, the teacher and the students should come together with a creed, what they are about, and they should recite it every day to remind themselves what they expect of each other. Maybe for high school and for older children, along with the jobs, they also have elected officers.
Okay.
The president of the class, the vice president, the secretary, and the treasurer. And those could change every month.
All right.
Or I would change them personally. I would change them every month so everyone gets a chance to hold an office. Right. And I would actually take time to teach civics during those elections. That they could campaign, they could make campaign speeches in front of the whole class, then have ballots and let them vote. But they would hold the office for maybe a month, especially elementary, so someone else could have a chance.
I like how now you're talking more than just we have in class rules, like the teaching that you can lift up from that. This is what civics looks like. This is government. This is local government. This is, this every 4 years, these same things happen. And you first got to get to know people and I like that connection there. Yeah.
I probably would not do the class officers the first month. I probably would wait for a month so they can see each other, get to know each other, so they'll know who they're really voting for.
Okay.
But I would go the whole gamut. They would make a speech in front of the class. You would have ballots. You would have the election workers so they know how that whole process works.
Yeah.
So from probably 4th grade, maybe some 3rd graders could handle that also. The next thing I would do inside the classroom is that the teacher would have a word of the week. We talk about word walls and putting words on the walls, but I would, to really build a culture, to have a word of the week. It could be a word that comes from math or science. It could be a word that has to do with a current event. Could be a word just somewhere or another that every week there's a word and they understand it. That's also another way to build vocabulary. And you could challenge the children. You could say, now our word of the week is anticipation. If you're reading your library book or the newspaper, or you hear a commercial and it uses the word anticipation, we expect you to report to the entire class that we saw our word of the week. The next one is to have at least weekly class meetings. And those class meetings, of course, the first month would need to be modeled by the teacher. And after that, the president and vice president could take turns leading those meetings. And the meetings would not be anything personal, but how the class is done that week. What did we learn this week? Have someone summarize what you learned in math or reading, and you could even assign that to the children before the meeting so they would be prepared to think about, oh yeah, all week we worked on fractions. So I'm going to say for math, we worked on fractions this week. So have a class meeting and they could talk about what's going on in their lives, what's going on in the classroom and things like that. Along with the word of the week, I believe there should be a biography of either the week or the month, but a person that's famous. And let's say like Hank Aaron, since he just died, or Cicely Tyson just died. So the kids would have to look it up on their laptops, Chromebooks, make a little report of it. And then as a class, that could be a bulletin board even, where everyone has a written report of what they found out about this famous person. Of course, the teacher can lead that whole process with talking about the person, showing a video of the person, things like that. So the kids, and it needs to be across all areas.
Yeah.
People that are very famous, everybody wants to do Martin Luther King and George Washington Carver. They know those two.
Right.
Give them some other people.
Yeah.
Amelia Earhart. People in Congress now. Yeah. Nancy Pelosi. But make it across genders, make it across races, people that are already dead, people that are still living, and showing the way. And that helps the kids know what they can become. So you're teaching career awareness every month.
Few things. First, love that. Once again, you're bringing in the social studies standards and the reading standards, and you're bringing in speaking and literacy standards all in while building culture. I just want to lift that up to our teachers and those who are watching. Like, when you're thinking you're going to school and you're only learning language arts, oftentimes all of the other subjects are inside of the subjects being taught.
Yeah.
And even the time that you're not teaching an objective or a standard, and you're just talking class rules or expectations or procedures, there's still all this learning happening without you seeing the learning happening. So
right.
I think that is something really, really cool. Here's the sad thing, Ycedra Daughty, and I just call my mama Ycedra Daughty by the first name.
Oh, you can do that from time to time. It's all right. You're a grown man now.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That's all right. That's all right.
Here's the thing. This is a 30-minute podcast, so we just getting started. So we're going to have to invite you back.
And I have some questions.
We've got so much to, oh my goodness. We have to do a series with you and just let you rock 3 or 4 straight episodes where we can really talk to our teachers, to our principals, to the parents, to the community. Because, I mean, like, you got the knowledge that our listeners and our watchers want to see. So we'll talk about that off camera of what can we do to.
I'd be agreeable to that.
Some of the best educators in the world are people you've never heard of. They may not be on TV or get the National Teacher of the Year awards, but we want to give those teachers their flowers today. We know the sacrifice and the heavy lifting these educators go through daily. With that said, we present Sprout Outs. Sprout Outs is sponsored by Pinky and Paws Petals. Owner and founder Jamaica Lewis has always loved flowers as a kid, and after her mom passed, she wanted to design the same flower arrangements she saw at her mom's funeral. She went to design school and learned how to craft and design floral arrangements. From there, the design started at home, and after great feedback, her business has flourished worldwide. Weddings, funerals, special occasions, and more. Pinky and Paws Petals ships artificial designs and delivers local ones in the Denver, Colorado area for now until after COVID. Now it's time for Sprout Out.
Who would you like to sprout out?
Okay, here's who I'd like to sprout out.
Okay.
The first sprout out is Marva Collins, a famous African-American educator. She was born in Alabama. She went to college at Clark College in Atlanta. And I believe that's an HBCU.
Yeah.
She married and moved to Chicago in 1975. She began a school, her own school, the Chicago West Side Preparatory School. She has written 4 books. She has a film that was a documentary that was made on her life in 1981. I would challenge any of the listeners to get one of her 4 books and read it, or all 4.
Yeah.
Marva Collins' Way was her first one.
Yeah.
The second one has the best title, Ordinary Children extraordinary teachers.
Mm.
Then she taught a book called Voices. I think I can't read my writing right now. Lord have mercy. And the last one was Redeeming Education.
Okay.
So look up Marva Collins, a famous African-American educator. She was old school all the way. She did such a wonderful job. People from Oklahoma visited her school in Chicago, stole all of her ideas, brought back to Oklahoma, and started a program called Great Expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Great Expectations usually has classes all over the state, and it is good training. It used to cost $500 for a week. It is worth it if you have to spend your own money. It is worth it, teachers, principals, if you can find money in your PD budget and send your staff. It is absolutely worth it. But it all came from Marva Collins.
Now,
then I'd like
we're talking about the late great Cicely Tyson. I believe Cicely Tyson
was she
Marva Collins
in the movie?
Did she play her in the movie? I did not realize that part, but I know she in a 1981 film. I do know that part.
She was. She was, and Morgan Freeman was okay.
Wow.
Awesome.
Wow, that's wonderful.
Story. Mm-hmm. Okay, who are you?
The teacher I want to shout out today is Kalonda Holloway.
Okay.
She taught with me for maybe 4 years at Oak Ridge Elementary School. She was my pre-K teacher. A true woman of God, a true teacher's heart, love for the children, taught pre-K in the most gentle way that anyone could. I loved spending time in her room. I ran into her about a month ago and I saw her and we screamed and hollered and hugged like the COVID wasn't even around. And then we stood in this one store and talked for over an hour. I love Miss Holloway. And when those children got through out of her pre-K class, they were so ready for kindergarten and beyond.
Yeah, we love
the most gentle, quiet voice. Her children in pre-K would lead the weekly assemblies we would have, and they would do as good a job as the sixth graders. Just an excellent educator. She's still a brave hero working for OKCPS, and I love her, love her, love her.
Awesome.
My third shout out is to a child that was a student at Edgemere Elementary School when I was principal at Edgemere Elementary School. So this was back in the 1990s. Then she grew up, went to college, and became a teacher for OKCPS, Oklahoma City Public Schools. Her name is Quenisha Vickers. She may have married since then. Last time I knew of her whereabouts, she was teaching at Edwards Elementary when there wasn't Edwards Elementary. You know, the school is closed now. But those are three I want to shout out. Marva Collins. They just happen to all be female.
It's okay.
But next time I shout out some, let me tell you, I've taught with and been a supervisor principal over men who also do a good job. It's not a sex kind of thing at all. But Marva Collins, Kalonda Holloway, and Quenisha Vickers.
So shout out to all of them, and I love that the student becomes a teacher. Oh, those are real good.
What greater compliment can you get?
Can you get, indeed. And then you see them in the hallway or you see them at a school and you hug and embrace, just those warm fuzzies all.
Yes.
All right. Well, we appreciate you joining us for part one of your episode of See What Had Happened. And for our viewers, if you have a story you'd like to share, just like Mrs. Daughty, you can email us at contact@andredowdy.org. Your story can be from a student's perspective, a parent's perspective, a teacher, or an administrator's perspective as well. We would love to hear your ideas on this show. Well, that's the end of this story, but not the next. Don't forget to join us for the next episode of See What Had Happened.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. You can find out more at teachbetter.com/podcast.